Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission is simple. You give us the source material, the articles, the research, and we cut right through the noise to deliver the essential insights straight to you.
Today, we're really getting into it. We're doing a deep exploration of some foundational spiritual texts all about the ultimate goal of liberation. We're going past the surface level stuff.
Right into the technical instructions. And we have a fantastic question from a listener that really gets to the heart of it. They ask, how exactly does this profound act of letting go actually happen? And is there a trick to it? A specific lever you can pull to get the mind to finally release the concept of self in meditation. Okay, let's unpack this, because what's so fascinating is that the sources don't offer some single mystical trick. Instead, they lay out what looks like a surprisingly specific technical blueprint.
It's almost like an engineering problem for consciousness.
Exactly. It's a systematic process for cultivating the mind in such a way that letting go becomes, well, not just possible, but inevitable.
That's the perfect way to frame it. The texts absolutely confirm that. You won't find a shortcut, but you will find a methodical, progressive ripening of the mind. And the ultimate goal is what's called cessation or extinguishment.
And the definition they give for that is, it's pretty intense.
It is. It's about zero residue. Cessation is explicitly defined as, and I'm quoting here, the fading away and cessation of that very same craving with nothing left over. Giving it away, letting it go, releasing it, and not clinging to it.
Nothing left over. That's a punchy way to put it.
It's the complete metabolic failure of craving. There are no underlying tendencies left to restart the whole process.
That sounds incredibly demanding. I mean, for someone just starting out, the idea of nothing left over must seem almost impossible.
It demands total commitment, for sure, but the sources are clear that the path itself is reliable. They use this phenomenal analogy for the result.
The one about the snake.
That's the one. The liberated person sheds the near shore and the far as a serpent its old, worn-out skin. That image, it just signifies this total, clean detachment from everything you previously thought was you or yours. That's real freedom.
Okay, so if that's the goal, total freedom, shedding the skin, we have to start at the very beginning. What is the fundamental problem that makes all this effort necessary in the first place?
The problem, in one word, is grasping. The texts are unequivocal about this. It is the cause of continued existence.
So if you look at that whole chain of dependent origination.
Right, and we don't need a whole lecture on causality here.
No.
The simple version is that craving leads directly to grasping. And that grasping is what keeps the whole cycle of suffering, rebirth, old age, and death going.
So if you want to stop the cycle, you have to find where the engine is getting its power from and, cut that wire.
Precisely. And that wire is grasping, which leads to the next logical question. What are we grasping onto?
And the sources are crystal clear on this. The main objects of our attachment are what they call the 5 aggregates.
Right. Form, feeling, perception, choices, and consciousness.
To put that in more everyday terms, what are we talking about?
We're talking about the temporary building blocks of our entire experience. The physical body that's form, the emotional data that's feeling, the labels we put on things, perception.
The decisions we make.
That's choices. And then just the raw awareness itself, consciousness. These are the only things we have to define ourselves, and we make the mistake of gluing the idea of I or self onto them.
So if you're trying to let go of the self, these 5 things are what you have to drop, but just knowing the list isn't enough, is it? How does the mind actually start to dismantle that core identity view that makes us cling so tightly?
The key is the rational application of what you could call the anti-self formula. The crucial insight, the one that really starts to move the needle, is realizing deeply and functionally that these 5 aggregates, every single one, are impermanent, they're sources of suffering, and they are perishable.
That's the lever.
That is the mental lever.
So the meditator has to apply this insight to every form, every feeling, every perception, whether it happened in the past, is happening now, or might happen in the future. It's this constant self-correction.
Yes. This is not mine, I am not this is not myself, over and over.
And this is where it gets really profound, because if consciousness itself is impermanent and it's decaying, what does that even mean for things like memory or identity?
Well, that's the point. The texts explain that all the sorrow, the pain, the sadness, all of it arises only when you regard consciousness or feeling as something solid, as yourself. But the text says that very consciousness decays and perishes.
Why would you cling to a decaying thing?
Exactly. Once you truly see the decay, the clinging just, it stops.
Yeah.
naturally.
So the problem is grasping the impermanent. The solution then has to be the systematic, almost institutionalized process of ungrasping. This brings us to the path itself.
Right. The Noble Eightfold Path. Right view, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and immersion. But what's so vital for our listeners' question is how the text describes the function of that path.
They don't just say, here are the steps, follow them. They explain the orientation, the direction of travel.
Precisely. The whole path is described as relying on seclusion, fading away, and cessation, and ripens as letting go.
It ripens as letting go. So every part of the practice is designed to create a kind of mental environment, a gravitational pull, where release is the natural destination.
It's the difference between trying to paddle a boat upstream versus just pointing it downstream and letting the current do the work. The text used that beautiful analogy.
The river slanting toward the ocean.
Yes, a mind that develops this path slants, slopes, and inclines to extinguishment, just like a great river slants toward the ocean.
But to keep that momentum, to keep that slope, you need power, an engine. And this is where the supporting factors come in, the 7 awakening factors.
Right, the engine of the path. We're talking mindfulness, investigation of principles, energy, rapture, tranquility, immersion, and equanimity. It's an intensive list.
And just like the Eightfold Path, these factors also have to be developed in a specific way.
Critically, yes. They also must rely on seclusion, fading away, and cessation, and, here it is again, ripens as letting go. This confirms that letting go isn't some special event you save for the end. It's the ripening, the result of every single step along the way.
So the core of the practice is this continuous application of all these factors, making sure every thought, every word, every action is pointed toward fading away and cessation.
But you can't even start that engine, really, unless you've dealt with a fundamental prerequisite.
Ethical conduct. Sense restraint. This is the starting line.
It's completely non-negotiable. We see these instructions over and over again. The foundation requires guarding the sense doors. You can't do the high-level work of deep absorption if your mind is constantly being battered and pulled around by the world.
So it's like establishing a firewall. When you guard your senses sight, hearing, your mind itself, you're preventing these bad, unskillful qualities, what the texts call covetousness and displeasure, from flooding in and overwhelming you.
It's a zero-tolerance policy for mental contamination. If you let that unskillful input in, you're just constantly feeding the craving mechanism, which strengthens the grasping. It's a vicious cycle.
But if you succeed in guarding the senses,
You achieve an unsullied bliss inside themselves. A clean internal stillness that allows the deeper meditative work to even begin. Without that initial containment, the mind is always leaning outward, always clinging.
Okay, so this brings us right to the heart of the listener's question about the direct action. If the trick is actually the whole path, what are the moment-to-moment instructions? How do you actually do this fading away at the millisecond level? Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the sources go from these grand ethical frameworks right down to the immediate, raw moment of sensory contact.
And the key is understanding that suffering doesn't come from the sight or the sound itself. It comes from the reaction to it, what the texts call relishing or clinging. This is where you apply letting go directly.
The blueprint is so clear. When your eye sees a sight or your ear hears a sound and it's likable, it's desirable. The untrained person immediately approves, welcomes, and clings to it.
And that approval is the start of relishing. But the practitioner intervenes right there at that exact moment. The instruction is, if a mendicant doesn't approve, welcome, and keep clinging to them, relishing ceases.
And when relishing ceases,
Suffering ceases. It's that immediate, a moment-to-moment release.
that requires incredible vigilance, though. How do you practically develop that kind of disillusionment with a nice sight or a pleasant sound? What does not approving even look like in real time?
It means deploying the rational mind. It means you see that desirable sight not as a source of permanent pleasure, but through that lens of impermanence we talked about. You see the eye, you see the sight, you see the feeling it creates, and you see that all of it is temporary, perishable.
So the mind is freed when that rational understanding just ends the relishing. Greed ends.
It's a constant intellectual refusal to commit to the fleeting moment. You see something engaging, and instead of chasing the feeling, you insert the understanding. This is changing, this will pass, I am not this. And that breaks the chain of grasping right at the source.
The micromechanism of letting go.
Exactly. And we even see this mechanism built right into the core meditation practices like mindfulness of breathing.
I found that instruction just stunning. It's not a general watch your breath. It's a highly specific technical practice. The meditator trains by thinking, I'll breathe in, observing, letting go. I'll breathe out, observing, letting go.
It's so powerful. It integrates the goal fading away cessation directly into the physical object of meditation. By observing and stilling the breath, you're constantly reinforcing the idea that even this most fundamental process is something to be observed and released, not grasped.
And this systematic observation and release, this is what builds the capacity for the mind to enter deeper states of concentration, what the sources call the four absorptions, or jhana. This is the path to the higher mind.
And as the mind gets perfectly stable in these absorptions, the whole process of letting go culminates in, well, the highest doctrinal event, the cessation of perception and feeling itself. You literally run out of things to cling to.
Which brings us to the final incredible point about the non-action of release. This really puts the final nail in the coffin for the idea that letting go is some kind of trick or a sudden act of will.
Yes. When the mendicant emerges from that state, the cessation of perception and feeling, the texts are very careful to say that they do not think I will emerge or I have emerged.
Why is that detail so crucial?
Because it shows that ultimate release is not a momentary, forceful decision. If you have to will yourself to emerge, you're still bound by intention, by a self-concept. Instead, the mind reaches that state automatically because it was previously developed through all those steps we just talked about to lead to that very culmination.
The mind just accepts the peace that its own development has created.
It's immersed by perceiving. This is peaceful. This is sublime. That is, the stilling of all activities, the letting go of all attachments, the ending of craving, fading away, cessation, extinguishment. It's the consequence, not the struggle.
So, what does this all mean? For our listener, the trick to letting go isn't a secret shortcut. It's not a password. It's this systematic, progressive, and highly technical process of developing the mind to remove the very preconditions for grasping.
The sources show a clear, three-part mechanism. First, you establish the ethical ground with sense restraint. That's the firewall.
Right.
Second, you apply sustained effort. You develop the path factors and the awakening factors that are all designed to ripen as letting go. That's the engine.
And third, you cultivate that direct moment-to-moment cessation of relishing and grasping through deep insight and immersion, which culminates in the complete non-clinging to those five aggregates.
So the ultimate freedom, it's less a sudden, forceful act of will and more the inevitable, serene culmination of a mind that has been systematically and rationally trained to favor non-clinging at every single point. The river has finally reached the ocean.
And that leads us to a final provocative thought from these powerful sources about the nature of this ultimate achievement. We started by saying that this whole project is based on realizing that everything conditioned, every feeling, every thought is impermanent.
That the spiritual quest is about freedom from pursuing permanent states. And yet the very texts that describe this ultimate cessation, this letting go of the self, also describe the resulting state as a profound, unshakable freedom. A freedom that's called undefiled, achieved in this very life, and leads to no more future lives.
So if everything conditioned is impermanent, what does it mean that this final state of total release is called unshaken and eternal freedom from the cycle of time?
It suggests that this systematic process of letting go ultimately reveals a reality that is entirely outside the conditioned, decaying world we spend our entire lives struggling to grasp. Something for you to ponder as you continue your own deep dive.